Hello again. If you have seen the reports this afternoon, claims today made by the U.S. ambassador to South Africa, Rueben Brigety, that he would stake his life, basically, I should say, that the South African government has sold arms and ammunition to Russia to help its war effort in Ukraine. The ambassador's comments also took center stage during the president's appearance in Parliament today for a question and answer session. However, the Speaker of the National Assembly said that the president could avoid the question from DA leader John Steenhuisen because it was not on the prepared list of questions for the day.
A little while ago, the United States government announced that weapons, ammunition, and materials of war were loaded onto the sanctioned Russian ship, the Lady R, when she docked at your government's naval base in Simonstown last December. This suggests that the ANC government is actively arming Russian soldiers and
Order, honorable members, please.
who are murdering and maiming innocent people, not only in Ukraine, but also across the African continent. It's been half a year now since the scandal of the Lady R docking in Simonstown broke. And I find it inconceivable that a president worth his salt would not have been briefed on the situation by now. Mr. President, can you confirm whether weapons of war were loaded on board that Russian ship before she left Simonstown? Thank you.
Thank you, the leader of the opposition, the President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. The matter, and let me say.
Honorable Mr. President.
Yes.
I'm really sorry. You have a choice whether to respond to this question or not. Honorable members, order, because this is a new question. It is. Honorable members, all that I am saying is this is a new question. So if the President wishes to respond to the question, he will. If he doesn't, no, come on, Honorable. You are a leader of a party. Stop doing that. You are a leader. Honorable Steenhuisen, please, please. You can do better than that, honestly. Honorable President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Whilst Mr. Steenhuisen puffs off his anger and is performing, I wanted to say, Honorable Steenhuisen, Simonstown, it's not what you call your government's Simonstown. It is South Africa's. It belongs to the people of South Africa. No, I wanted to correct you. And I want you to be patriotic and regard installations as important as those as belonging to the people of South Africa. So I want you not to be derisive, and I don't want you also to be as insulting as you are about things and installations such as those. It belongs to the people of South Africa. Having said that, we are all aware of the news that we all became aware of the Lady R, and that whole matter, Honorable Steenhuisen, is being looked into. No, it isn't. It's being looked into, and whilst the process continues, I want you to allow that process to continue to reach its fruition. I know that you are so keen. You are so keen and you are so interested in knowing exactly what happened. The matter, yes, the matter is being looked into, and in time, we'll be able to speak about it.
President Cyril Ramaphosa, that's what he said today in Parliament. Joining us now is our senior political reporter, Ziyanda Ngcobo. She was at the briefing given by the US ambassador today, and Moeletsi Mbeki, the political analyst, but also speaking now as chair of the South African Institute of International Affairs. Good afternoon to you both. Ziyanda first. The claims made by the American ambassador and his tone. What happened?
His tone, excuse me, was the most interesting aspect, and the language, Stephen, excuse me, speaking about profound concerns, fundamentally unacceptable, the language of the ANC in its 55th National Conference documents, outrageous and patently false claims that were made, and talking about then that vessel, Lady R, docking in Simonstown. You know, this is all something that you don't expect from a U.S. ambassador who's just returned from the U.S., excuse me, where a high-level delegation was going to explain exactly that, the stance of Russia.
Mr. Mbeki, this is I've never heard an ambassador of any country making a claim like this against our country before. Do you think the United States would make this claim without evidence or intelligence of some kind to back it up?
I think it's very improbable, it's very unlikely that they would make such an allegation if they didn't have evidence. The United States has a huge interest in Simonstown and in the Cape Sea route. Even during the apartheid era, the United States government and the British government, they had an agreement with the apartheid government to monitor Soviet shipping going round the Cape and report to Britain and to the United States. And you may recall that there was a naval officer who was spying for the KGB. It was the Americans who arrested him. He wasn't arrested by the South Africans. It was the Americans who arrested him when he was on a training course in the United States, and then deported him to South Africa to stand trial. So the United States has a huge interest in Simonstown. It's very unlikely that they are not keeping a very close eye on what's going on in Simonstown.
So, I mean, there was an interesting element of timing that you had the briefing by the US ambassador and then questions in Parliament. President Ramaphosa's response that the matter is being looked into. This happened in December, the Russian ship, the Lady R, docking in Simonstown. 6 months later, the matter is being looked into. That doesn't sound like a denial to me.
Well, it was a strange answer, a surprising answer, let me say. The arms sales from South Africa are controlled by a very large committee, which is actually chaired by the minister in the president's office. It's a committee called the National Conventional Arms Control Committee. So every weapon that's sold outside South Africa has to be approved by the National Conventional Arms Control Committee, which is chaired by Mondli Gungubel, who is a minister in the president's office, and the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Minister of Defense, Pravin Gordhan, all the top ministers in the country sit in that committee. So for the president not to know what that committee is doing, I think is very improbable.
Ziyanda, I mean, it seems that the US ambassador is not just frustrated by this. There's been a build-up to this, because our government's claim has been that we're non-aligned. So the claim from the US ambassador is maybe that our actions are not matching our words?
Absolutely. And it would seem that what the ANC says as a governing party and what the ANC-led government communicates is also what they're taking aim with. The fact that, you know, in its policy documents, it basically takes what they say a hostile approach towards the U.S. is not actually taking into cognizance what the U.S. has in terms of its relations at a governmental level when it comes to trade relations. The PEPFAR program is one that he emphasized quite greatly. AGOA, and you'll know that the African Growth and Opportunity Act is up for renewal in 2025, and he really was also, it was unclear from him what would happen then, but certainly emphasizing that, of course, this would have to be debated by the Senate, you know, whether or not we get that act renewed. The tone and the language of the South African government and the governing party will actually influence whether whether or not we have that renewed. So when you look at then what your question is, Stephen, to respond to you, you know, the fact that this delegation, firstly, was not the one communicating and is actually the U.S. ambassador leading the charge is one thing. The fact that DIRCO right now is saying that all our questions as the media need to be directed towards the Defense Department, it's quite clear as well that it doesn't seem like there was an awareness of what Lady R was doing between the 6th and the 8th of December last year. And there are implications, Stephen, going forward in terms of the nature of our relations as the two countries continue. I must also add that we did ask about whether or not they're not on the back foot right now. During the Donald Trump administration, Africa didn't seem to be a priority. And the ambassador basically saying, we've sent Secretary of State Antony Blinken, we've sent Janet Yellen, Kamala Harris also went to Ghana, Tanzania, and Zambia, and these are all indications that they're committed to the continent.
Mr. Mbeki, there's another issue to all of this, which is that if you dock a Russian ship at Simonstown in the dead of night with floodlights on, people are going to see it. There are hundreds, thousands of homes there. I mean, I can't imagine, I mean, to put it another way, how did anyone think this was going to end? I mean, I wonder almost if there's a question, maybe even about competence, maybe even about control of our Navy. I don't know what to think.
Well, if there was nothing to hide, then presumably it didn't matter that people saw it. I would have thought if there was something to hide, then you wouldn't have the floodlights. Although I don't know how you unload a ship or load a ship in the dead of night without lights.
There's so many ways to look at this. If I wanted to argue for the United States, I would say we have a ship docking at night. It's a Russian ship. Our words about being non-aligned do not match our actions, and that the South African government is not being honest. If I wanted to argue for our government, I would say this is just about the United States being a bully. The United States is trying to bully us ahead of trade negotiations, quite important trade negotiations for AGOA. Is it possible at all to know where the truth is going to lie here?
Well, it is possible. You know, there are very few secrets in the world of today. However, the point, though, which I have to make about the government, the president's control of his own government, that's where really the problem lies. The president, to me, as a political analyst, doesn't seem to be in full control of the cabinet. Just to give you an example, a few years ago, Denel bought a subsidiary of a British company that made military vehicles, landmine-proof, bulletproof military vehicles. Now, this was an incredible, huge asset, so Denel bought it from British Aerospace. The stories that then came out afterwards was that people in Denel, and to this day nobody knows, sold the whole intellectual property, including the blueprints on how to make this military equipment, to a company in the United Arab Emirates. So now, if you sell the intellectual property of South Africa, of such a strategic asset, then obviously it is without government approval and almost obviously without presidential approval. So the difficulty we are faced with here is that actually there seems to be very weak controls over the various departments and state-owned enterprises of the South African state. So it is feasible, given the poor control by the president, it's feasible that a minister could have sold those arms to the Russians without going through the National Conventional Arms Control Committee, and who the president wouldn't be any wiser.
Sure. Moeletsi Mbeki, thank you very much indeed, the chair of the South African Institute of International Affairs. Well, thanks also to our senior political reporter, Ziyanda Ngcobo.